Righteous Felon Craft Jerky is the official jerky of BellyUpSports. For over a decade, Righteous Felon Craft Jerky has led the American meat snack revolution by concocting delicious, adventurous, U.S.-sourced jerky recipes for uncompromising carnivores across the country. With 15 different flavors to choose from, Righteous Felon has all jerky lovers covered, and by using promo code BELLYUP, you will get 15% off your purchase at RighteousFelon.com. Do your taste buds a favor today and rip into a bag of Righteous Felon jerky.
The Serie A, probably the most intriguing league this season. So we'll kick things off with the relegation battle. In 18th place, in 20th place, we have Venezia with 10 points. Gives you kind of perspective after you heard what the Bundesliga was at.
Yeah.
Very interesting jerseys. Obviously, Gianluca Busio. Do you see potentially Busio making a move out of Venezia if relegation happens yet again for him over there?
I don't think he's there yet. And that's nothing to do with his talent, because he can be talented. But talent means nothing when you can't showcase that talent. And I think that's what we're seeing with him, because it's not happening on the U.S. side, and it's not happening on the club side, per se, to the same level like we've seen. You mentioned Tanner Tessman earlier, that he was able to kind of showcase his talents, or you've seen with players getting poached off of very poor teams, but that player has been like outstanding every single step of the way. If it wasn't for him, this team wouldn't have 10 points type of stuff. Like, it happens regularly. I don't think he's that guy on the team, but I don't think he could make a move, but it's not going to be like a big money move or really a major step up. It's going to be kind of a lateral step. Mm-hmm. Like, he could be the guy that just stays at a potentially relegation level zone Serie A team next year. And that's not a terrible thing, because, Serie A is pretty regular for its turnover into the league, but it's not usually the same teams every year going up and down. There usually is two new and then one same. But yeah, I don't know. I don't see he's making a big move right now, but at the same time, that could change in 6 months' time, really.
That's true. 19th place, also with 10 points, is Monza. I have really nothing else to say, man.
No, Monza's
yeah.
Monza.
Yeah, that's really it honestly, like, for me, my knowledge when it comes to like the mid to bottom teams in the Serie A is pretty low. Obviously, if it wasn't for the fact that Gianluca Busio played in Venezia, like I would have no interest in Venezia. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now with the Serie A, especially because I have to cover so many leagues, and so sometimes you got to pick and choose who and where you want to be focusing on. But yeah,
here's a name for you, Daniel Maldini. That's who's on Monza. So Paolo Maldini,
the only Maldini that can't stay his whole career in AC Milan.
Yep. Yeah. So
also Cam. So
yeah, brother to Christian Maldini.
That's gonna be the Maldini
and Milan Duric. Those are the two kind of big names.
Okay.
And then Milan Duric is 34 years old.
yeah, that's a name. In 18th place, we got Cagliari with 14 points. I mean, same question I always ask you about the teams in the relegation zone. Do you see anybody making a big push in that second half? That second half of the season with the adjustments that we all hope to see them apply.
Man, I don't know if anybody is getting out of this bottom three in the Serie A. And that's not to say that they're not good enough to get out of it. They're kind of capped by a Verona team right now who can score a lot of goals. And at the same time, they give up a good chunk of goals. So that's not helping them. But against the bottom three, they're exceedingly good. So they have to somehow jump Verona to get out of that position. And I don't think Verona's really doing enough to get themselves dropped into the relegation zone. Obviously, Como could drop in there. I hope not, just because Como being like Como around that, you kind of hope they stick around.
Fabregas's team.
Yeah. Also, it's a really beautiful area down there. So, but yeah, no, yeah.
And I don't know.
Rafael
Varane is what, like an advisor now with the club?
With Como, I think that sounds correct, like a player advisor, something like that. Sergio
Yeah, because
Roberto.
he was supposed to be a player, and then he retired,
Yep.
and now I think he has some sort of role with the team.
Yeah, they
Uh,
also have Alberto Moreno. So 2 Liverpool guys hanging out there.
Interesting.
I'm all for it.
But yeah, no, I think I agree with you. I think it's very straightforward. Unfortunately, there's no play-in opportunity, um, for the 18th place team. It just is what it is, man. But all right, the European competitions and that European Conference League spot, we got Juventus in 6th place, which Kelcey did mention earlier, with 28 points this year. And then the Europa League spot, we got in 5th place Lazio with 31 points. A very interesting team this year. I think Lazio has intrigued me so far this year, has been fairly competitive. I think able to stand toe to toe, which I'll be honest, man, Serie A has been very weird the way the year started, where it was like a shit ton of ties.
Yeah.
But Lazio has been very intriguing, a team that you see them do fairly well, but then eventually kind of go back to where they usually belong in the table, if that makes any sense. Um,
Yeah, well, a team that only has 1 draw compared to everybody else. The problem is they've given up 23 goals on the season, which out of the top 6 teams is nearly double the next closest.
yes.
Yeah, so Lazio, I mean, while a good team, they're scoring more goals than all but 2 of the teams. Atalanta and Inter are higher than them, but beyond those 2, it's literally they are the next highest goal scorer, but they're just giving up so many, and so they're going to win or they're going to lose in dramatic fashion. It looks like so.
Yeah, that is a good point. Do you see Lazio falling off?
Yeah, I do. Juventus has 10 draws on the other hand. So you got to think Juventus in the second half of the season can turn some of those draws into wins, and usurp them at the very least. There's also a couple teams that are outside looking in that I think have an opportunity, like Milan, Udinese potentially getting in there if they can figure out how to score goals on the other side. So, yeah, but I think Milan's one of those teams that could easily jump into this top 5-6 range.
Do you see Juventus improving their position?
Yeah, they should.
Riding off of the fact that like Tim Way and Weston McKennie, which being that Juventus is now where we're at now, at least in the discussion, how did you feel about that part? And obviously the Christian Pulisic documentary, that which I think it's a little too early to be doing a documentary on a 26-year-old, which I get. He's a lot of people view him as the true U.S. soccer legend, that's gonna hopefully surpass Landon Donovan, which I mean I don't think he's that far away, which it's not that impressive of a feat, to be honest. But I haven't seen the documentary, but obviously they had like that little clip about the frustration and the bias towards American players over there in Europe. How'd you feel about what was said, and then like having to hear those Brits, even though they have not done fairly well against the U.S. in the World Cup, the arrogance that they have against the Americans?
Yeah, that's no surprise. It's going to be that way until the U.S. wins a World Cup, for being honest about it. Like, for England to do it, it's just like kind of Big Brother, even though, fun fact, the U.S. has a World Cup over England. But, that doesn't count, right? Because that was the 1960s, 1950s, whatever. Not a World Cup championship, but a World Cup victory over England at the time. 2 World Cup victories now over England. But yeah, it's like get used to it, Americans. We're little brother when it comes to soccer. We're big brother in every other sport. You just kind of have to deal with it. Part of that documentary, the one thing I didn't hate, though, was that he was honest about the difference in the leagues. Him playing in England, it was very biased, versus him playing in Italy. He feels a lot more opportunity. And the reason why, and we've talked about this a couple times with American players, it takes a trailblazer to really set a path for American players to be accepted. And in the Bundesliga, or sorry, not Bundesliga, in Serie A, there have been many Americans, Alexi Lawless being one of the first to kind of drive the path forward. Gucci Onyewu, let's not forget, drove the path forward, and ironically, both at AC Milan. And, now you have what you see Weston, Tim Weah, Yunus Musa, and Pulisic all in Milan or Juventus. Like, you see a path forward for Americans where in the EPL, it's Josie who flamed out, Landon who was there for 6 months, who flamed out in Germany, and then Clint Dempsey, who was about as accepted as you or I would be in a long distance sprinting competition. It's just like you just kind of have to accept it if you're an American. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just it sucks, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and I mean I get that, and obviously the part I think the thing that's a little bit different with Christian Pulisic versus Weston McKennie is there hasn't been any doubt of Christian Pulisic's role with AC Milan. Some people are viewing him as the best player in AC Milan right now, which if you look at their place in the table, probably not necessarily a bragging point. But whereas Weston McKennie, who I feel like year in year out has had his moments with Juventus, has showed out for Juventus, has consecutively earned a starting role with Juventus, and then every offseason, and he mentioned every offseason he's always the guy that's getting rumored to be shipping out because he doesn't fit to this new coach's. Which also Juventus, that's probably the other thing that we should probably mention how many coaches they have gone through.
Yeah, crazy.
Since the era of them winning consecutive Serie A titles, but it always seems to be Weston McKennie being the odd man out, but then Weston McKennie showcases what he can do,
putting them together,
does a little Wingardium
goals.
Leviosa, and next he's back in the good graces of Juventus, which I think could be a little bit just made up. I think fans, not necessarily fans, but just pundits wanting to just say Weston McKennie is going to get shipped out for the sake of just like, I know what's going to get attention, which is going to be pissed off Americans that they're not getting the love and respect for the sport. But the thing I will say from the English fans that were like, making fun of us because we call soccer, even though you guys created that word.
Yeah, it's your word. Sorry.
And all that. And I'm not going to go down to the history of football, but the arrogance that I can't name a single American. I get the American coach thing. I get that one. You can't name an American manager, even though he Jesse Marsch did keep Leeds United afloat, and then obviously did not in the second time. But yeah, I mean, like you mean to tell me you can't name Christian Pulisic, you can't name Weston McKennie, like you can't name one American Tim Howard. You can't name one American player.
Brad Friedel, Casey Keller,
Landon Donovan. Like, I mean,
I know Arsenal fans can name an American, and they're not going to be happy about naming them, but they can name them.
Yeah, so I'm like, you can't name one American, and it's just insane to me that like it's the arrogance, and then obviously they were trying to. The thing that I think for me that kind of like at least irks me a little bit is just that like it's just that they pretend that America isn't as culturally different than other countries. Like there is a huge mixture of cultures and a lot of cultures that where they do love football. Like football is the sport that they love. And you're meshing us and obviously, like myself, I take pride in being an American. I'm proud of being born in this country. I know the sacrifices that my mom made to get to this country. But like you just think of and I know what they're doing. I know what they're mentioning. They're just mentioning regular Americans, like the traditional Americans that grew up in American culture. But it's like, our culture also comes with it. That's why you see the American lineup is probably the most diverse lineup you're ever going to see in any sport. Like, and that's not taking jabs at nobody. Like, I mean, we know the German lineup is going to be nothing but Germans. And maybe a mixture of other guys.
France is the only one that can say that they probably have the most players, maybe not born in France, like in mainland France. It's probably the only team that can somewhat compete with what the diversity that's going to come into an American lineup. Like American lineups not just come from different countries that are American born or born to American service parents, we're talking about within the states, different regions, different dialects, different thoughts, different opinions. I mean, Nacogdoches, Texas versus Seattle, Washington, as far as players go. I mean, that's a real thing. You know, Clinton Dempsey and Landon Donovan were oil and water, but on the field, they worked perfectly together. You know, that's just the weird dynamics that come into America, where in the UK, the difference between Birmingham, England and Liverpool, England is an accent. It's not a great deal different as far as your everyday life goes. Most guys are blue collar. Most people have to work up through a low income family in those situations. You know, in the US, somebody from New York could be low income making twice as much as somebody who is in Texas and considered middle class type of thing. So there's just so many different dynamic pieces to an American lineup that just no other country can really compare to. And, you know, when you talk travel, that's a whole other piece of it too.
Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, I do think that there is a bias with American players.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly, and I think it's how you see and I mean, I would even say anybody from North America. There's a huge disrespect for Mexican players as well. Huge disrespect for Canadian players. Anybody from that North American region, not South America, because obviously they spend a bunch of money if your last name ends with a Dino. But I think I think for North America in general, like there's just not that respect for them. I mean, how many times have we seen Keylor Navas get disrespected? The man is clearly a world-class keeper, and everyone just, well, he's not this, he's not that. And I was like, no, it's because he's Costa Rican. That's the only reason why you guys don't want to give his credit. Like, not that it literally was a 3-time Champions League winner, three-peat, by the way. And so
deserves his own trophy on some of these showcases. He's just a bust somewhere in most of these teams that he goes to, and it's instead he's an add-in piece to potentially replace an injured guy, despite being one of the best goalkeepers still at the age of 36, 37. Like, yeah, it's crazy the disrespect that happens.
So even though they're talking about American players, I think there's a bias towards the CONCACAF region. I mean, hell, and I'm not trying to defend, you know, not if you're Jamaican and you don't feel this way, that I get it, but it's kind of a slap to the face. And I mean, I think Musa has actually even spoken about it about British, you know, English players that choose to play for Nigeria or their African country of origin from their family. And it's the same thing with Jamaica. Like most of these guys are like, what, 27, 28, realizing, okay, I'm not getting called up by England. Let's just go play in Jamaica. Like,
yeah, let me get an easy international cap to my name.
Yeah, so like,
and I hate using the term easy because that's not how I think it is. I think it's still tough. It's just they look at it as, oh, it's not England, so it's a step down. It's that type of easy, and in reality, it's a different game.
Yeah, man, when you have to play in those humid places like El Salvador and Honduras, it's a different battle, man.
That's physical too, man. That we've talked about this before. I think the difference in physicality between North American football versus everywhere else, especially European football, is night and day. People are like, oh, it's physical in England. No, man. No, it's not. You haven't ever taken on a 6'3" linebacker while you're trying to go up for a header. And by the way, the goalkeeper on the other side is a 6'6" center or power forward for their All-American basketball team. Like, you don't have to go up against that in England. Like we do. These guys are throwing elbows and throwing bodies. Like, it's not easy for an American player.
Yeah, and so I do have a sentiment towards that bias that, and like I said, it's not just America. I think it's just, you know, North America, Caribbean, and the Central America, all in general, that they do it. The only difference is that they take jabs at America because we call it soccer. And
hey, I'll keep calling it soccer proud. I've also said football though. See, I use them interchangeably.
I mean, I feel like we changed it. I go back and forth from football to soccer all the time. I'm like the Ray Allen tweet, but like, I mean, no one's gonna get that one. But yeah, I think Weston McKennie does get constantly thrown into that conversation, and I think that's the difference, right? Because like you have AC Milan, which clearly is just a healthier environment for Christian Pulisic versus Chelsea, and that's not taking jabs at Chelsea by any means, but
no, it's just It was
but
not a healthy environment.
it was just not a healthy environment for Christian Pulisic, especially after what he did in 2020. Because 2020, Christian Pulisic he was just him. But yeah, like I think Milan was a great change of scenery for him. I know there was concerns. I'm gonna just say this: Landon Donovan is just gonna keep saying someone should go to the MLS until finally someone goes to the MLS. I think that's his take. I mean,
And then Michael Bradley's it up.
yeah, I mean Gio Reyna, he's saying that he should come to the MLS. So can't
That
wait.
one makes sense though. Gotta get playing time somewhere.
True enough. But we'll see what happens for him. And I kind of, but yeah, Juventus, sixth place. I do think that they can improve their position.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and now the Champions League teams, we got fourth place Fiorentina with 31 points. Um, they did have a big loss, right? They don't have Bove anymore with the team. For obvious reasons, what happened in that Inter Milan match, but
Yeah.
and obviously he's getting a defibrillator installed into his body, or I don't think it's called a defibrillator, but the
It's a pacemaker.
pacemaker and installed to him. And obviously in Serie A, they don't allow players to have anything like that on them, which is why Christian Eriksen had to leave Inter Milan. So, but Fiorentina, obviously they did a massive overhaul of players. Obviously, David De Gea being one of their big names that came into this club this past offseason. Anything that intrigues you for Fiorentina? Do you think they keep this up? Is there any concerns that you have for Fiorentina to stay in the Champions League?
I don't know if I fully believe in them, but they're playing everybody on that team that's coming. Everybody on that squad is playing above their weight class. It feels like they are fighting tooth and nail every single game. Which yes, they're all professionals. They're all going to give it their all. It feels like Fiorentina has that extra edge that a lot of teams that surprise, if you will, into a Champions League spot have. And I think the difference is Fiorentina has a bunch of players that have the quality to back up that edge. They're all kind of like playing with a chip on their shoulder. And I do think Fiorentina can keep that up for the rest of the season because right now they're being disrespected still. Despite everything, they're still being disrespected, still being doubted. I still think they have the opportunity to stay up there. It's just, this is going to be just fake it till you make it. Keep, all the different cliches I can think of that are.
Do you think there's going to be any adjustments that are going to be made from the opposing teams?
I don't know. When it gets to tactics against Fiorentina, it's just a matter of do what you do best if you're the defending team. That's I think the big thing. Like, do what you do best. Don't try to go outside of yourself to face Fiorentina. And the top 4 or 5 teams that are in Serie A, maybe not Serie A table, but in Serie A. So the ACs, the Inters, the Napolis, the Atalantas, yes, even the Lazios, Juve, I guess I should say 6. Those teams, if they just stay within themselves against Fiorentina, they have a much better opportunity. It's when teams try to, Fiorentina lulls you into this false sense of security at times, and then they take advantage of it quickly in a hurry, and next thing you know, good luck. And it's just if you do what you do well, if you know what you do well, I should say, you should succeed against Fiorentina. But Fiorentina, if you make a mistake, good luck.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So. I think Fiorentina is going to be interesting. I think right now Serie A is probably the most competitive league in the entire Power Five right now.
Yeah.
So I think we could see I don't think anybody is safe, honestly, in the Serie A table. Where it is right now could be completely different by the time we get to May, and so I think that is something interesting. I mean, and we might look at the tables by April just to see how that last month's going to look like. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see that. But Inter Milan, last year's winner, third place with 34 points, and only a point behind second place Napoli with 35 points. When you went into this season, did you expect to see these 3 teams in general, like Fiorentina, Inter Milan, and Napoli? I mean, Napoli, Antonio Conte, dude, the guy just understands Serie A better than anybody else. And he did this and made the very crazy decision of sending Victor Osimhen to Galatasaray on loan and trusting Lukaku.
Lukaku knows the Serie A as well. I I look at these three teams as maybe not a surprise, but I think their demanding nature right now is the surprise. Like they demand wins from their teams, which Inter Milan historically has always demanded wins. Fiorentina for much of the early 2000s demanded wins. Napoli is like a 3-year wonder that takes a break for 5 years, then comes back for 3 solid years and then takes a break. This is an extended period for Napoli that's surprising. But they're still good. I don't want to take it away from them because they are still a good team, but it's just like their nature, these three teams' nature right now of just capitalizing on every possible mistake again in the other teams. And we talked about it a couple times now. In Serie A, you just have to win your games. Like, it doesn't matter how pretty it is. So many teams are drawing. If you just keep winning, you get a 2-point advantage every single time over the team that draws. And so these three teams are just capitalizing every opportunity they get. They like Fiorentina, for example, may not score a ton of goals, but they score the most effective goals out of anybody else in the top 5 right now. And Inter Milan, on the other hand, scores a ton of goals and makes you feel inferior at times. I mean, they just won 6-0. Like that's how good Inter can be. And Napoli on the other end is just kind of in between. They are just precision and skilled at just staying above the team they're playing and staying above the teams around them. And it maybe is a surprise in the standpoint that this is the order of these three teams and they're second, third, fourth. But I think they should have been a top 6 team. All of these should be top 6 teams. Maybe Fiorentina is the one I look at like the outsider, but these three don't necessarily surprise me a lot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like I said, it's going to be very open. I think that it's still anybody's game when it comes to Serie A. Things change in this league. Like you mentioned, all you got to do is just win and find wins. And there's a team in the middle of all this that I see can find wins and get back on top. And I think that that's going to be an interesting to see how that second half goes. But currently, the front runners for the to win the Serie A is Atalanta in first place with 37 points. This team, mind you, when Juventus was just dominating the league, Atalanta just became the team that was the second team in Serie A, while while you know AC Milan and Inter Milan were still trying to figure themselves out, while Napoli would be kind of interesting but kind of not at the same time. Lazio just somewhere. Same thing with Fiorentina. They were just somewhere in the tables. Um, Atalanta became this team that just played with grit, played with very Serie A type ball, and back then it was what was it, Duvan Zapata and Luis Muriel that was leading
Yeah.
the charge, and now this version of Atalanta, this is also the team that gave Bayer Leverkusen their only loss last year. We have the all-time image of their coach, shushing Xabi Alonso for what reason I have no idea, but that was funny. Um, do you think there was a confidence from that team? Also, behind African Player of the Year, Ademola Lookman. Can we just is there something special with Atalanta, or are we gonna see them fall off of this first place position?
I don't know if it's special as much as
This year is
prepared.
just bizarre.
No. I think this team is good. I just think this team is prepared more for Serie A and the ups and downs. 2 guys that stand out for me: Mario Pasalic and Juan Cuadrado. Like 2 guys, Serie A vets. These guys have been there. They've done it multiple years. They know how to navigate this weirdness. Ederson, you have Rune from the Netherlands. This team is made of guys that just survive in a lot of ways in Serie A, and now they're kind of put together behind one shield, and they're able to go out and play way above what you might expect. Heck, Rui Patricio is their goalkeeper. Like, did that name ring a bell? Anybody? It's surprising anybody? Yeah, he is. This team it feels like from top to bottom, this team is just out here to win and survive. Really, necessarily win is kind of second to just survive in a lot of ways. And this sometimes in Serie A, you just have to have those seasons where you do that. More wins than losses, or sorry, more losses than draws, but they have way more wins than anybody else up there. And it's like, so they're not really drawing a lot. They're losing 3 out of compared to the 1 draw, but they're winning. And that's at the end of the day, the important thing. Like if you can just turn these draws into wins, that's what you need to do in Serie A to survive. And like I said, there's players here who have just been, that's their entire career is just doing what it takes to get a win in Serie A. And you put enough of them under the same shield, you might surprise yourself with some answers here. So yeah, I mean, surprised, sure, but not necessarily as surprising as it could have been. If this was Fiorentina first, I'm way more shocked than Atalanta. Atalanta, Napoli up here in this season specifically feel right first and second in Serie A. So
Yeah. All right. Teams to note. I'm just gonna say it. AC Milan in 8th place. I think that they just need more from their players. They need to just get some results in. I think it's great to see everyone have this constructive criticism of Christian Pulisic. Obviously they're saying Christian Pulisic should be your your penalty taker. All those things that came in along with this year, so far this season. But there has to be some structure. There has to be, and obviously new coach, right? For AC Milan, and all those things. But they're not that far away. And there's a lot of results that should have gone their way, but obviously they let it become draws. Kind of how you mentioned with Atalanta, that they turned those draws into wins. And I think maybe the second half of the season for AC Milan, they will probably see that adjustment. Maybe we see Lau be back to being the guy that everyone thought he was going to be, the guy that was like rumored to make all these moves, make the big move to Barca, big move to how many moves he was linked to. But we need to see more from the star players. Like it shouldn't just be Christian Pulisic's name that we think of when we say AC Milan.
Yeah, I agree with that. Look, let's not forget they still have Teo Hernandez, Alvaro Morata. As guys that are on this team, Yusuf Fofana. Like these guys still play for Milan. There's no reason they.
I think there's also rumors of who's the center back. For AC Milan, the Englishman.
My
trying
brain shut off. I'm sorry.
I'm right there with you, man. It should be. Damn it.
Not Tamori.
Tamori.
Is it Tamori?
Yeah, it is Tamori.
Okay, I didn't know he's English, so that was
yeah, because he came from Chelsea.
Yes.
But yeah, Tamori. I believe he's rumored to potentially make a move back to the Prem. I don't know what club is I've heard plenty of clubs. Maybe a return to Chelsea. I don't know. But Tamori, because obviously since he moved to AC Milan, very much benefited his career, and I think that's what led to all these other former Chelsea players come to AC Milan, like Loftus-Cheek and Christian Pulisic,
Tammy Abraham. My favorite pairing with Christian Pulisic is Tammy Abraham.
Yeah, I mean, I have a soft spot for Tammy Abraham as well. So, better option than fucking Alvaro Morata. No offense to him. It's just you're a journeyman for a reason. I was surprised you were captain of Spain for the Euro. But you do have your moments, and if you were playing against Real Madrid, I'd probably say put you on the field because you're always good for that revenge goal. But
he's great against Spain or Spanish, or great for Spain or against Spanish teams. That's about as good as that gets.
But we need to see more from AC Milan. We need to see them flip the switch, and have more killer instinct, because I think that's what's hurting them, especially when these draws that should be wins for them.
Yeah, it feels like Rafael Leao is just kind of chilling out there sometimes, and it's like he's not showing the killer instinct he once had, and that makes me nervous for the future of Rafael Leao. And that's frustrating. But no, a team for me though, I do just want to throw this out there. I know we mentioned Juventus. By the way, undefeated Juventus this season, but 10 draws.
Undefeated in 6th place.
Undefeated in 6th place, 10 draws, 4 straight, 10 draws. Talk about a team that just needs to get some wins under their belt.
Oh my! This is giving me flashbacks on Wake Up MLS when I called Philadelphia Union mid when they were undefeated, and I had so many Philly fans attack me for calling them mid. Like, but we're undefeated. I was like, yeah, but you guys have like a shit ton of draws, and I was like, and I remember when I recorded that episode of Wake Up MLS, and I was like, look guys, can we just say this that Philadelphia is just mid? And I remember everyone was like, "Bro, someone's gonna be mad." And I'm glad that I appreciate that Jose and everybody at Wake Up MLS was supportive of me calling them out. As a matter of fact, made a clip, and that's what got even more attention to me. But
Good. I mean, that's the thing, though. I think this conversation needs to be had with teams like that and teams like Juventus. Like, you're Juventus, for goodness sake. Yes, there was a time where you were relegated, but it wasn't through performance. It was through paying people incorrectly, specifically referees. And, this Juventus team, like, you have 6 wins and 10 draws. How embarrassing is that you are not doing anything? This feels like a Juventus team that is trying to play in 1994 in Italy and not playing in 2024 or now 2025 soon, where, like, they're just not putting any heart behind their attacks. It feels like if you're drawing with a team through 75 minutes, bring on attackers. Make a forward-thinking move. Bring McKinney on to kind of facilitate some sort of spark. We know he's a spark plug as USA fans. Like, the guy knows how to spark for better and for worse.
And then you have Tim Weah, who's just a dog, and I'm so happy that
these guys.
I'm so happy that he got himself a spot in the starting lineup as well.
Yeah, it just feels like Juventus right now is kind of that duck in the middle of the pond trying to figure out where they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
Do they want to go to the left side? Do they want to go to the right side? They just don't seem to want to know. And it's, as a manager, as a coach, you just have to look at this team and you're like, you know what? I got to shake something up and get some kind of spark in the lineup. Whatever that is, whatever you have to do, whoever you have to bench, whoever you have to start, whoever you have to bring on in the 35th minute, for goodness sake, I don't care. I need some excitement from this Juventus team. Like, they're known as the old lady for a reason. I didn't think it was going to be because they suck at trying to attack. They just are so boring right now. I feel like I'm being just droned to sleep by the old lady.
Especially when you're attacking options, right? You have Dusan Vlahovic, which I haven't heard anything about him, so clearly not well. Yeah, it's been interesting, what's been going on with Juventus, and I mean the fact that you mentioned they're undefeated, and I haven't been paying attention enough to care. It just tells me everything.
I've been sitting on that one for most of the show. It's just like, it's crazy.
And also, you love their kits too, by the way.
Yes. I absolutely adore their kits.
Yeah, so
I want to see these kits winning more.
Yeah, so I agree with that one, man. But oh my god, yeah, I didn't even bother to look at the record. I just saw their point total. I was like, they're mid-table. I mean, they can't be doing that great.
Yeah, 10. 6 wins, 10 draws, 0 losses.
Oh my god, I mean, well, no, you got to win games in the Serie A.
This is the crazy part. There was a 4-game stretch where it was 0-0, 0-0, 1-1, 2-2.
That just gives me more props to Atalanta, by the way, because they win for it. They go. Yep. That's the difference between them versus a Juventus versus an AC Milan. They're willing to take the risk, whatever that risk is, and it's getting them the results. Not, and I mean, it's not like they're doing like significant. It's not like blowing the competition away, because I mean, Napoli is like 2 points away, and Inter Milan is literally a win away from evening out with them. So I mean, like, it's not that they're doing everything like perfect, but it's all about those little risks that you're willing to take, and that's why Atalanta's in first place while Juventus is in 28th place with 6 wins and 10 draws.
And their last game was a 2-2 draw to Venezia, who is, as we said, sitting on 10 points, dead last in the league.
Like, that's a win for them.
Yeah. You just gave Venezia a point. Congratulations. You just excited Venezia, and now they're going to go on to probably get out of the relegation zone because they drew with Juventus going into the break.